Wearables is in its infancy. This is this could be the platform for bigger things to come.
It's really hot right now, and there's a lot of cool technology out there, so I'm really happy to be here.
One of the things that I've really appreciated about this particular conference, Wearables, the Wearable Dev Conference here in San Francisco, is two things. First of all, it's been extraordinarily well organized, and as a speaker, I'm also a speaker here, very well supported. The other thing that has been really extraordinary for me is to see so many women speakers. Thank you kindly for letting us represent. Jenny Murphy was amazing, Cecilia Botti, killer as always, and the caliber of presentations in the wearable space has been phenomenal.
Hey everyone, nice to meet you. I'm Daniel Kivatinos, COO and co-founder of a company called drchrono. So I was going to go into a little bit about our company, then I was going to go into a little bit about wearables. And then if we have time, I'll try to give you guys a demo of some of the stuff that we're working on as a company. So what we do as a company is focus on mobile healthcare for physicians. And you can see here an iPad. Who here has a mobile phone? Everybody in the room is raising their hand, just about. So that tells me in the future, you're all going to have a medical record on your phone. What's crazy is how many people here have access to their medical record through an app on their phone right now? Raise your hand if you do. One. So what we're trying to do is enable every person in the world to have their medical record on a mobile device. This also includes doctors. So we're looking at physicians and we're looking at patients and we're thinking, how do we enable everybody in the world to have access to their medical data? So a little bit about the history. So I'm going to go into some history and some case studies, talk about wearables, and then if I have time, I'll do a demo. So our company was started in 2009 by me and my co-founder, Michael. And when we started the company, what really pushed us to create what we created was I would go to the doctor, my parents would go to the doctor, my friends would go to the doctor, and they didn't have their medical records in digital format. So we decided, let's work on this problem. Let's try to figure out how we can get that data to the patient, to me, to my family. I want to manage my parents' healthcare. I want to manage my son's healthcare. So we looked at this and we said, how do we do this? And we got together, me and my co-founder, and started working on this company. To date, we have close to 75,000 registered physicians on our platform. Last year, in 2014, we had 270 million in medical billing processed through our platform. And today, we have close to 4 million patients. As a company, when we first started, we were building on the web. The iPhone just came out, and we were looking at the screen real estate thinking, this screen is really small. How can you put data on there? So very early on, we were thinking, is it usable? Is it possible? So we built on the cloud first. But as time progressed, we realized that the mobile phone, these smartphones, were the future. So we started to work on the phone. So we have an iPhone app. That's it right there. This is the physician iPhone app that we have. And we have the iPad app, like I just mentioned. But we also have Google Glass. So if you think about wearables and where they're going, Google Glass was sort of a first step, at least for us, from looking at it from a medical perspective, into the wearable world. We built a Google Glass app, and we were thinking, how would this work in a medical setting? What would the value add be to a doctor? And as we started to release the product, we got a lot of really interesting feedback on what the doctors wanted to use it for. So one really interesting use case that we had was one physician told us he wasn't an expert in a specific surgery. and he wanted to talk to another doctor and that doctor see that surgery real time. We didn't build that, but that was some of the feedback we got. Another interesting piece of feedback we got, and part of what we did build, was a doctor was doing a surgery, and generally what he would do is he would take off his surgical gloves, pick up a high quality SLR camera, take a picture of the wound area, put the camera down, go wash his hands, because they were, in fact, he needed to disinfect his hands, put gloves on, and then he would start the surgery again. But one interesting thing when we released our app was he gave us feedback and he said, I can take a picture now, hands-free, and it goes into the medical record. So he would be doing a surgery, and he would say, okay, glass, take a picture. Literally without touching glass, without touching his face, and the picture would go directly into the medical record. That would be documentation for medical billing. That would be documentation for potential audits. That would be documentation for the patients and their families. So it's really valuable in terms of hands-free physicians. This is sort of where the future is going. When you go to your doctor, he talks to you, he's like, hey, how's it going? It's going great. Give me a second. Let me just type this into the... And he's looking at you like this half the time, right? You get that experience where you're not engaged as much as you want. But with a wearable device, whether it be wrist, face, whatever it is, the doctor's hands are free to actually think about you instead of the interaction. So we built a Google Glass app. We released this, and around 400 doctors were using it. So as a company, we didn't want to be like a regular healthcare company. We looked at companies like Apple, companies like Square, and we said, what are these companies doing right to create a nice experience for the doctor in particular? So we really focus on simple, elegant design as a company. Now, part of the workflow here, and the way that we have it built out today, and this will change as wearables come out, but part of the way that we have it today is you as a patient have your phone. You can check in through your phone, enter data through your phone. The doctor gets that information, not even at his office. We're trying to move it to the future. So once that's done, you go to the doctor's office and you would have an iPad. So they would hand you an iPad and you can check in. So you have an iPad like this. You would enter data. This all exists today. You enter data. That data gets sent to the staff member. And then this is the check-in. We call it the check-in experience, where that data is given to the staff member. Now, once they call you into the back room, the doctor has access to all of that data also. So the doctor at the point of care here, Glass is also here, so at the point of care, the physician would use an iPad or an iPhone or a web browser or Glass to record the encounter with you. So they're talking to you, entering data, and because of the design factor and because of tablet design, we are trying to really optimize so that there's not too much typing like this. We're trying to create more of a quicker workflow. So we call it like medical form templating. So we have a whole team in our company that literally talks to doctors and says, give us all of your medical forms. We will build those out and put those onto the iPad for you and put those onto the web for you. And that team just builds out medical forms for doctors all day. So the doctor actually has those forms on the tablet device. And as well, like I mentioned before, we have Glass here. So out of that 75,000 doctors, around 400 of them are using Glass. So I think it's a very new technology. But also the technology itself, it can be intrusive. So, some of the doctors have mentioned to me at the point of care, they don't walk in with Glass on. It's got a camera. It's a weird experience, right? To see a doctor come in and sort of like be recording you. So one interesting thing one doctor told us was he puts the glass right here and it hangs up. He set up a thing to sort of have it hang. And he asked the patient, would you mind if I record this encounter? Sometimes he may want to document something, and you can simply just tap on the side of glass, and it would just record the encounter. And later on, he could revisit the recording, or his medical biller could revisit the recording, or even a staff member to document more of what happened. But this is a critical juncture for the doctor. A lot of doctors actually hire assistants to do a lot of the documentation in that small room because there's a lot of information that's happening. One case was a doctor told me he really wouldn't need glass most of the time because generally it's a standard visit, but sometimes you get odd information from a patient that you have to document so fast that you can't even look at the patient. So you have to either have an assistant there or you just have to be entering all the data. So the case this one doctor told me was sometimes, so say a patient comes in and they tell you that they were on a cruise and they ate something very specific on the cruise, and now they feel a certain pain in a certain part of their stomach. But then the doctor will ask a lot of questions and it'll sort of happen really fast, and you have to enter that data quickly. So at those points, you may just want glass just so you don't have to enter that. You want to just record that whole encounter. So it creates a good experience for the doctor. It creates less of a burden for a doctor. There are a few interesting companies doing work on glass specifically. There's a company called Pristine, and then there's another company called Augmetics. And these companies are really focusing on glass in healthcare. And then the last part of this whole experience is the home. So we want the patient to be able to go home, get a bill from the doctor, understand the bill, make it readable, and also sometimes the doctor will give you information like a pamphlet or whatever that is, and you want to pull that up also as a patient from home. Whatever it is, diabetes pamphlets, whatever they give you, like eating better, whatever it is, sleeping. So we're trying to give that whole experience, the whole experience of the round trip. Part of our success as a company, and this really applies to a lot of, I would say, startups in wearable. What we did early on is we created a freemium model. Have you guys ever heard of Box.com? Yes? So they have a freemium model. It's very successful. And Box is also a healthcare entity so that you can store medical data there. But we have a freemium model where you can use part of our software for free, and then we upsell over time. So for all the people doing startups, it's a unique way to get people interested in your product, using your product. I even heard of a wearable company that gives away a piece of hardware. I don't remember the name off the top of my head. But they charge for the software. So it was like a flip. And I noticed the same thing with Square, the card readers. You guys know Square? So there's a company that you can swipe credit cards. They give away the readers for free. I don't know if they do it so much anymore, but they cover like if you buy the reader, they actually give you that money back once you start swiping. But I noticed a lot of hardware companies are sort of taking this new route where you give a lot of the hardware away for free, and over time they recoup that. And that's what we sort of did here is we had a free version of our software, and then you can buy up to the other plans that we have. So they actually can use medical records. Doctors today can use medical records for free. And that's how we got a lot of our users using our software. And then they call us and ask questions, and they ask us about certain things, and then they ask us, how do I do this? How do I do that? And that's where we sort of say, some of these other features are not free. Part of our success also was going after the early adopters. So the 1 to 50 doctor medical practice specifically. We go and sell to the 1 to 50 doctor medical practice. If you try to go sell to a hospital, there's a long sales cycle, maybe a year or longer. So we wanted to, as a startup, make quick sales. We were going after sort of the grassroots of it. And I look at the iPhone as similar in the same sense, where people were buying their iPhones and they were bringing them into the hospital saying, I want to use this in the hospital, I want to use this in a medical setting. And the hospital would be like, wait, we have BlackBerries here, you can't do that. But so many doctors started doing it that the mindset started to change. So we said, let's give this to the smaller private practice physician and let's get lots of them. And then that will make an impact for us. So that we started that way. We're also going after the every specialty. So the software is very customizable depending on the specialty. So we have general practitioners, neurologists, family practitioners, gastroenterologists, psychologists. So I just wanted to give you guys a few case studies. And then after the case studies, I'll go into wearables. So this is a Dr. Sani. He's a gastroenterologist in Newport Beach who uses us. He really wanted to use our software specifically for medical speech to text. He didn't want to type anything. So with all the wearables that are coming out, you could probably put something on your wrist to talk, something on your face to talk. One thing about this, though, is we partnered with a company called M-Modal, who does medical speech to text. There's also Nuance, Dragon Dictation, if you've ever heard of them. They do medical speech to text as well. But medical speech to text specifically, there's a lot of doctors who really, really use that. You know, laceration, you could say things like laceration of the left leg, period. Patient needs, whatever it is, fill in the blank. But there's a lot of medical terminology that Siri doesn't understand. That a lot of these translators, these speech-to-text engines don't understand unless it's a medical speech-to-text engine. But we took one and we put it into the iPad. First vendor to ever do that. And it was a huge success. We have a lot of doctors using it. Another example, who's actually here in the area, if you guys want to go see a doctor using our software, is Dr. William Wall. He's an orthopedic surgeon in the area. And he really wanted to draw on something. He wanted to not use paper, but also share it with the patient and physically draw. So we have, part of our medical record is free draw, so you can draw on the actual iPad. And this is an actual encounter that was happening with him over here. Another case study is Dr. Dick Fabian from New York. He simply just wanted to access the data anywhere, share the information with the doctor, and get it out there. And then one interesting person is Dr. Metaxas. He's in San Francisco. He actually uses Google Glass. So this doctor right here is using our Google Glass app in his practice, and he records encounters with it. So he'll see real-time notifications about patients. He'll get quick glances about what prescriptions they're on, other information. It sounds silly, but just a photo of the patient, a picture like this, it helps a doctor. If you're seeing 30 patients a day, at the end of the week, you're sort of tired and you don't remember everybody's names, and they don't really remember unless they're looking at your chart and looking at your face. So at a quick glance, the doctor can actually see someone's face and recognize them and say, oh, okay, this is their chart, this is who they are. So now I'm going to go into a little bit about wearables in healthcare specifically, because this is where things sort of get interesting. So why now? So I'm going to go into a little bit about the background. You may or may not know about this, but Moore's law basically says integrated circuits every 2 years will double, which means this whole room had a machine in it, a computer in it, but every few years you could put more and more into that machine. So you can see here, machines are getting way faster. You could put a lot more in them over time due to Moore's law. So you could create things like laptops and desktops right here. And as the hardware got cheaper, they could condense more into it. They made smartphones. And I took one data point, And the data point said 3.5 billion people have smartphones, and this number is growing in the world. Just looking at some of Apple's numbers, Apple sold 75 million iPhones last quarter. So that's 15% of all the phones sold in the world. So where I'm going with this is mobile is a lot bigger than PC, and people tend to buy phones over PCs now. So what that tells me as a entrepreneur and as a founder of a company, this device will connect to all the wearables around us. So this is going to be what's controlling the health devices that we have on us or our family members have on us. So the hardware is getting even smaller. Here's a Withings watch. So this is one of their watches that just came out. A very expensive watch. It tracks the number of steps you've walked. But you can't even tell here. It's a matter of touching. So it's really interesting. This is one of the devices I've seen that it doesn't even look like it's a wearable until you tap it specific ways, and this timepiece moves around. And how is this being done? So the primary driver I see in all of this change happening is Bluetooth LE, Bluetooth Low Energy. So that's in this device right here. This has Bluetooth LE. The iPad has Bluetooth LE. My MacBook has Bluetooth LE. All these devices have this, and it's connecting them all together. And you can see here just how prolific it is right here. And a little bit more right here and on things connecting. So other interesting things that are coming out from like these specific devices, which can be put into wearables. And I think that a lot of these technologies are coming from the phone specifically. They built it into the phone and it's sort of proliferating into the wearables around us. The iPhone, with iOS 7 and iOS 8, it has something called precision geolocation. And it can tell you where you are exactly. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the near-term future, 10 years or so, you could literally walk into a doctor's office and your chart would flip open. So say you're going to see a psychologist. You walk in, your chart flips open. So because of Bluetooth LE and the precision of the location, you're going to be doing really interesting things. And it may not even be your phone. It might just be something on your wrist emitting a signal. And you just acknowledging, yes, I'm here. And one of the most critical things, of course, we all know is the cloud. If it wasn't for the cloud, a lot of this wouldn't be possible. But there's a lot of startups out there. I live in Silicon Valley myself. And these startups, the idea is only part of it, but also getting funding is critical. So there's a lot of accelerators and funding companies out there that help to provide the funding. So there's accelerators like Y Combinator. They provide $120,000 for any company they accept, and they accept 200 companies a year. There's Rock Health. They accept 100 companies a year, and they give $150,000. There's Kickstarter. You guys have all heard of Pebble, correct? So Pebble, they raised $17 million for their new Pebble that's still not released yet. They're right now on Kickstarter. So there's ways to fund a company. Indiegogo, there's a company called Misfit. They've raised $5 million for their wearable, healthcare wearable, piece of hardware on the wrist. So there's a lot of funding out there. You just have to have the right idea, and there are people that are willing to capitalize it. One of the also benefits of today's day and age, in the past you'd go to buy software. In the past you would figure out word of mouth. Hey, guess what are you using? I'm using something called Microsoft Office. Where do I get that? You could buy it on, down the block. And you'd walk down the block and you'd pick up the CD. install, Office. But now there's platforms. So you could rapidly push your product faster, the software part of it. So there's, Apple, there's Facebook, there's Google Play. These are just a few, the big ones out there. So I'm just going to go into a few of the wearables here, but I'll give you a few quotes. So this one's from Gartner in 2013. In 2005, they had 2.5 billion connected devices, mostly PCs, smartphones, and tablets. By 2020, there will be over 30 billion connected devices, not PCs, not smartphones, not tablets. Oracle, 2013, stated there's 100 things coming online every second. So these can be thermometers, cars. Nelson also stated 1 in 6 consumers own a wearable. So looking at wearables specifically in healthcare, I put them into 2 buckets myself. And this is something our company looks at. There are non-FDA approved wearables, meaning that a physician can't make a clinical decision from that wearable. Like a Fitbit. If you're wearing a Fitbit, the doctor really can't make a clinical infer anything from that. But then there's FDA-approved devices. So there's glucometers. So if you take your blood and that device transmits it to your phone, that can actually be sent to the doctor and they can make a decision off of that. Your blood is too, your glucose, your sugar level is too high, you need X. So looking at this, we really bucket things this way. I'm going to give you a quick list of wearables. So I'm going to give you some of my favorites that I've seen out there. There's hundreds upon hundreds of these things, but these are the ones that I really like. So this is one that's actually down the block from us. They're in Palo Alto. This company is called Gluco. They built a glucometer right here. It connects to an iPhone, and you can do readings, and you can send that to your physician. So that's pretty cool. That's FDA approved. There's another company called Agamatrix. They're, I believe, in Boston. They also have one. And this company is unique because they don't make money off this. They're not making any money off this when I spoke to them. So they give these away really cheap, the reader. What they make money off of is strips. So the people who are diabetic continually put their blood on here. A reading gets brought in, and then they run out of strips, and then they call Agamatrix for more strips. So that's how they generate a lot of their revenue, which I thought was really interesting. So if you build a wearable sort of like this, sometimes you don't make money off the actual hardware, but the other parts of it. There's another company here, another company in Palo Alto down the block called Eco Devices. And I thought they had a brilliant idea. What they did is they took something that already existed, the stethoscope, and you can literally, you know how you can pull the part off that checks your heart rate? You can pull that part off, you can plug this thing onto it, and instead of it just recording the heart rate the normal way, where you forget it or the doctor just writes it on paper, this is an audio recorder that's going to be FDA approved. So the doctor literally can take his regular stethoscope, pull it apart, plug something on it, and now there's an audio recording that can be sent to the medical record. This really is really interesting stuff. I personally would love to see my parents' readings from this device. My parents live on the East Coast. I want to see how they're doing. Here's another interesting company, AlivePort. They also do Pulse. This is FDA approved. Doctors can use this in their practice. They can give you an iPhone, you touch it, it records it, and then it's in your medical record. The device is actually behind this phone. I think this is an Android phone. But what they do is they snap it on. They have it for iPhone, Android. You snap this thing on, and you put your fingers right here, and it'll check your pulse. So that's another interesting device that's out there. There's also fertility trackers and thermometers. So this is a really interesting wearable. You literally put a patch on. Here's another one. It's a patch for your child. If they're having a fever one night, you can put the patch on them. You can actually go to sleep and not worry about it unless it notifies you and says, hey, it's a 103 fever. You need to go to the hospital now. This one's getting FDA approved also. This one isn't FDA approved, and I don't think that they're going for FDA approval. But you can buy this device, plugs onto your phone. You put it here, and you can see the heart, the baby's heart rate. So it's another interesting device that parents can buy for their children. It's not FDA approved though, so the doctor can't make any clinical decisions from that. Something else that's really interesting is that there are companies and people creating open source 3D printed prosthetics. And they're actually, people are using them. I've never seen one myself, but I've heard a lot of amazing things about this. And of course, there's Google Glass and augmented reality, where you wear something on your face and then it gives you some insights. One interesting thing about one of the companies that's doing Google Glass, their name is Augmetics. When the doctor walks into the room, the staff member controls the Google Glass, putting information real time in front of the glass. So if the doctor says, hey, how are you doing? What prescriptions are you on? Actually, the staff member in the back sits there and actually pulls it up in the medical records and sends it to Glass real time for the doctor to also see, well, last time you were here you told me you were on these drugs, now you're telling me you're on these drugs. Okay, you're not on that drug anymore. And then the staff members in the back actually documenting all of that. So they're doing real-time documenting of that company, Augmetics. And then there's companies like 23andMe, which you can take a swab and get a generic report of your family history. And this is the sort of stuff we'd love to put into a medical record, because this gives so many insights into what you're prone to. It's not there today. Doctors don't even know how to read these reports. When I talk to genomics companies, they give all this data to the doctor, and the doctor's like, I don't know how to read that. So you have to go to very specific doctors that are trained in reading genomics reports. Then there's other interesting companies like this one, where it'll remind you if you didn't take something. The thing that I like about this is drugs, right? So if you didn't take a specific drug, it'll give you a reminder every 4 hours. Hey, it's on the actual pill bottle. It'll remind you, stick it onto the pill bottle, and it'll tell you, how many times did you pick this up today? Oh, I only picked it up once. I should have picked it up 4 times, so I only took it once today. So it's an interesting company. This one's Sense, this company. And then you guys all know the watch revolution. I mean, this is, I would say, a renaissance of the watch that's happening right now. A lot of companies are getting into watches and trying to create the watch. And the watch is honestly part of, I think, the future. So you're going to see some interesting things from watch companies. I mentioned this company before, Misfit Wearable. So they've created a wearable where you can just put it on. It looks like jewelry. You can put it in where they sell all these different things like necklaces and key rings and different things that make it doesn't even look like a wearable. Here's another one, Athos. These guys are also, they were in Palo Alto, they may have moved. But they create this clothes, and you put these things in the clothes, and it basically tells you how you're doing during a workout. Super interesting. So a lot of clothing companies are partnering also. A lot of clothing companies are partnering with tech companies. I'm seeing that a lot more. There's also remote care teams. So There's a company in Palo Alto also called Better, and this company helps you with insurance and questions about your health. So right now they're only on the iPhone, but I can see them being put into a wearable. So say if you fall, your Better Care member will help you. But this is the kind of company that the value is in figuring out what you're eligible for from your insurance company, what you're not eligible for from your insurance company. Will also inform your family members of things for you. So this company, I think, is interesting in the sense that remote monitoring and remote care could be for sure part of the future. So, you know, I could see down the road, like, say someone has a wearable blood pressure cuff. I've never seen one, but something that's just on your wrist and then it could test your blood pressure every so often. A company like this would actually monitor that and then inform the physician and inform their family that something is wrong. So this company is just one of the companies that's doing remote monitoring, remote care. Now going into some of the software, so there's HEALTHKIT. HEALTHKIT records around 70 fields. So Apple released something called Health. It's on any iPhone. It's not on the iPad, but it's on every iPhone. And what HEALTHKIT can do is take all of this data from all of these wearables and it pulls it into one place. But it can only pull in around 70 fields. So it has blood type, it has steps, it has, believe it or not, alcohol consumption levels. That's one of the fields. So they have some odd fields, but it's interesting because there's a few companies out there. If you blow into the device, it'll actually tell you your alcohol levels. So that actually can be recorded in here. But this is, I would actually say, single-handedly, Apple have released the largest, I would call it PHR, personal health record, to date on the phone. So 75 million phones were sold last quarter. That's 75 million people who potentially are recording data in this. That's a lot. And you can build on this. And I'll show you guys a demo of this. We've actually built on this where you can take a wearable, you take a data point from that wearable, you pull it into your medical record, and you can share it with the doctor. Something just came out 2 days ago on Monday. Have you guys heard of ResearchKit? Oh, okay, some of you have heard of it, some of you haven't. So this came out 2 days ago from Apple. So what ResearchKit is you can build an app and it will actually do research for you. So say you distribute the app on the App Store and then people with Parkinson's disease download the app. You literally can record. So if I press this app and I press record and they start to walk and if you start to wobble a certain way, it'll actually record that and you can do studies. And Apple released ResearchKit just on Monday. So this is another way that you can start to record data. And it may not be the iPhone, right? It may be some wearable that you put on you, which talks to your iPhone, which then you can pull into your company's data. These are the areas that they focused on just to start with. There are more, but this is really what Apple was featuring on Monday. This is some pretty big news. I mean, now, I just spoke to one researcher, but he did a study of 3,000 patients. And the amount of effort that goes into that, you have to distribute the paper, ask them to fill out a form. It's very cumbersome. Apple's trying to make that easier. One really unique thing in the cloud, so I mentioned Box before. We did an integration with Box. Wearables in healthcare can leverage Box because Box is a HIPAA compliant entity, which means that you can put medical information into Box and you sign an agreement with Box that Box will protect your data and they're liable for X or whatever that is. So if you are building a wearable and you're like, where can we pull this data into the internet and put it? You can use Box. They have a really robust API. And for us, well, you can use us, but you can also take that data and put it in Box, right? So sometimes doctors are like, what happens if I don't like the software? Where does my data go? Where does my patient's data go? You can literally hit sync to Box, and the medical records all go into Box. So we're trying to make things way more open. But also, that data in Box, you can pull that in and put that on a wearable for the patient, right? So if there's blood work or whatever that is, you literally can put this data onto wearables for the patients from Box. So think of Box as like a third party where you can pull and push data. So there's also these right here. I'm sure you guys know about the connected home. For myself, I installed a drop cam into my parents' house just to make sure they're okay. I did it more on the health side than anything else. I just wanted to make sure that they are okay. But this already is telling me that if someone can't get up and change the temperature in the room, it'd be nice if you could just change the temperature for them. So that's what Nest does, right? And then if someone needs to come into a home and someone can't walk, this is a company called Lockatron that auto opens and auto locks the door. So you can do a lot of this stuff remotely for people that are disabled that need help. The connected car also, super interesting. Now, if you guys, I don't know how many of you guys are from this area, but if you go to Mountain View specifically and you drive around Google's campus, you will see these cars. So Google actually has self-driving cars. I've actually seen them. I've seen them a lot. The interesting thing about this sort of technology is when someone's disabled again, this is the type of technology that will actually help them. And then having a wearable to say, please pick me up, right? So say you're going to see your doctor, maybe you have like a self-driving car in the future. That sounds crazy, but maybe not so crazy. Google is investing a lot into the self-driving car. There's also Google Fit. I think it's very new, but it's out there. And you can put data also from Android. You can take all the health data from all these devices and put it into Google Fit. I don't know too much about it. We haven't worked with it, but it exists and it's out there. So here's a picture from 1996 about like the quantified self, right? So like the person who's taking care of himself. So this device, I think it had like, I don't know, 30 readings it could do on like someone's health. But what's silly is in 1996 they were thinking like this is part of the future. And I actually think we're going there. It might just be a watch in your hand. But this is what they thought it would be in the future. So the quantified self, I don't know if you guys know too much about that. It's basically just being aware of yourself and accountable for your own care. So if you're aware of your own heart rate all the time, you may be more accountable for your care. If you're aware of your blood pressure, I don't know if I put blood pressure on here. If you're aware of your blood pressure, most of the time you're going to be aware of, oh my God, it's high at this point in the day, or why is it so high at this point in the day? Okay, that's because I work out then, or whatever that is. But also healthcare needs to be open. So there are some APIs out there. A lot of these are government funded. Actually, most of these are government funded. This one isn't, and this is our API. But you can push and pull data into medical records from wearables. And we have, if you guys want to take a picture of that, these are just some of the ways that you can do that with a wearable. So if you wanted to create a healthcare wearable, here's a few of the APIs out there. If you did want access to our API, this is it right here. So you can go there. And what we're trying to do is give everyone access to our API. What I've noticed with a lot of healthcare vendors out there, their incentive is not to create an open community. Our goal is to honestly create an open community because we can't do it all as a company. So working with other people that are building amazing things, I think it's a win-win all around. So I'm going to go into a code deep dive for anybody who's a coder. I'll just go into brief things. These are real actual snippets of our code in our production machines. So this right here is HEALTHKIT. So HEALTHKIT, it takes a little time to get used to, but you can push and pull data from an iPhone. You can So like my steps, I can pull that in to my app, put that into the cloud on my servers from this type of code. So that's what HEALTHKIT would do. You can also push data. So say you have a wearable, you can take that, push it into your app, then push that into HEALTHKIT, and now it's on Apple servers, where other apps can get access to that data. Here's something else, TOUCHID. So TOUCHID actually is really simple. This is our real TOUCHID login. This is actually how our TOUCHID works in our software. I don't know if you guys know too much about TOUCHID, but it's a biometric reader on the iPhone. So you can put your fingerprint on an iPhone and you can log in. You can buy things. It's starting to do more and more interesting things. We put this into our actual code because doctors hate typing a password. I don't want to type the password. I don't have the time for that, you know. Then we're like, all right, let's create a PIN code. That's a 4-digit PIN. They literally said, I don't have the time for that. So they didn't want to type 4 digits. They're too busy seeing the patients. So now they just put their thumb on the biometric reader. They're in their app, and they're using drchrono. Going back to Box, I'll just give you one snippet of code from Box. What I said before is a physician can hit sync and all that code goes into Box. All the medical records go into Box. So at this point here, I have a snippet of code for that right here. And this was actually fairly easy to integrate with Box. So if you wanted to take a wearable, create a wearable, or build software for a wearable in medicine, you can put the actual data into Box if you wanted to. And this is some of the code that we have. And Google Glass, I have some code on that also. So this is some actual code from our Google Glass implementation. Glass is unique because it took me a while to figure out the swiping. There's swiping up, swiping down with 2 fingers. There's swiping this way, swiping this way. There's tapping. But you really have to assign like what it's going to do for you. So we have here like 3 tap call, 3 long press, swipe up, swipe right, swipe left, swipe down. And this is actually like what we're using. So you can see here it's calling some of our stuff. Awesome. So I'll give you guys a quick live demo. I'm going to just do a demo of the patient side. So here's Apple's Health and our app right there, the 2 top. Now the interesting thing, I'm going to launch Apple Health. This is my data, so it's actually pulling in my data right here. Give it a second. There you go. It's starting to pull up some data. So you can see here my personal data. So I'm just going to slowly go through this so you guys can see it. And what's interesting is Apple has a way to record steps in the actual iPhone. So I just keep it in my pocket and it's just recording this. It's recording that. One thing I was doing is I was recording my blood pressure over time, but you can tap, you can hit add data point, and you can just add a data point. But the interesting thing is, if you have a wearable and it fits into that I think it's 72 fields. If it fits into one of those 72 fields, you can put that data into this app, from your wearable, if that makes sense. So, this right here is probably the largest personal health record distribution ever from Apple, the Apple Health. Now, what's interesting is we have 4 million patients. So if you go into our app, right here, it's asking for Touch ID. So I'm going to just put my finger on there just to get in. It's logging in. So now I'm in the personal health record. This is what the patient has on their phone. You can see medications, you can see medical conditions, you can see allergies, lab results, all the kinds of stuff you actually kind of want with you. If you have something urgent, you can look and see what your past appointments were. You can schedule future appointments right here. I mean, this is all stuff that you actually want as a patient. You want to be able to just communicate with your doctor in a quick way. You can quickly write an email to the doctor in a HIPAA-compliant way, meaning that no one else can read it. You can do that through here also. But the interesting thing that we've done here is you can actually control what doctor sees what's in Health, the Apple HEALTHKIT app. All those wearables that you have on you, you can actually share that data with the doctor. So if I share that, I turned it on here, right there, and then I go over to sharing status, the doctor's going to see all this data on me. So if I can record other things, so say I have a glucose reader, or say I have one of the FDA-approved devices, you can get that data into here, and then the doctor can actually see that data. So if a doctor wants you to be more accountable for your healthcare, he can give you one of these wearable devices, and he'll actually see that data. So there's some real power there. Well, thank you guys.